Hey gang, John Backrelli here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Thursday, we're back on our regular schedule, and it is June 29th. Getting ready for 4th of July next week, and water temp at Belle Isle is 69 degrees. It was 70 last week when we did the report, so basically no major change. And with the crazy weather we got coming up, I'm guessing it's not going to change much. But we'll get into that in a minute. Still a lot of cold water up on Lake Huron coming down as well. That's going to buffer everything quite a bit. So if we don't get anything crazy hot or crazy cold, we should probably stay right about where we are right now. And the mayfly hatch just kind of is just doing this kind of prolonged, not crazy heavy, but just kind of a prolonged hatch out there right now. And I mean, we're getting a few ashore. Just depends on the winds and whether we have a real warm day or if we have a cold day. So, but the hatch is still going out there. And the guys that are perch fishing right now are kind of taking advantage of that. I know they probably don't realize it, but a lot of that perch bite is going right now because of that mayfly hatch. And that's where these fish are congregating at, or out in those areas where the hatch is going. So out by the St. Clair Light, out by the South Channel, a little better quality sounds like coming maybe over from the dumping grounds. But there's still guys catching plenty of big perch just out by the channel, out by the 26 can and all the way up, by the mouth of the South Channel out there. There's also, we're getting more and more reports of shore fishermen that are seeing pods or wolf packs of big perch along the shoreline. And I mentioned that in the last couple of reports that you're going to see that. And when these mayflies are coming ashore and they kind of stack up along the shoreline with the winds and so forth and the currents, these fish take advantage of that. The big bluegills, the perch, everything feeds on mayflies, and it's not uncommon to see schools of these fish, especially with the clear water that we have right now, just cruising, especially early in the morning, and then in the evening again, just gorging on whatever mayflies they can find. So that is definitely a pattern. It's kind of a cool pattern if you have a fly rod or an ultralight. With an ultralight, you can pitch beetle spins and stuff like that. You don't have to fish topwater just because the fish are feeding topwater. Just take advantage of the fact that they are there. And so speaking of that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Major League fishing tournament that's been going on. And some of these guys have been coming in the store, and early on, I knew there was a topwater bite going, and I knew they were catching fish on topwater, but I really had no idea to the extent of what was going on out there. So these guys have been catching fish like all the way out in 20 feet of water. It's pretty crazy what's going on out there. So, normally when you think of topwater out here, you're thinking about these fish being in relatively shallow, but some of these guys were catching fish like literally out in the middle of the lake. And I really wasn't picking up on exactly, what their needs were. And I mean, we didn't have quite the right baits in some cases for what some of these guys were doing, but I was able to really piece together, exactly what was going on. And they were literally sight fishing some of these fish out there, just waiting and watching, kind of like we do for white bass. And when they saw those fish sucking mayflies off the surface out there, then they would try to get as close as they could without spooking those fish. And then they would pitch baits especially like Zara spooks, something that's going to cast a long way but still be up on, a surface bait. And then as opposed to what you guys are used to doing, I know a lot of you guys use whopper ploppers around here, and we use torpedoes and other poppers, but some of those baits just don't cast as far. So in some cases out there, and I've said this before, like for talking about like drop shot and throwing swim baits and stuff, how you're fishing forward, right? Trying not to spook those fish in the clear water. And that same thing goes for these topwater bites. And it makes sense, because if the fish are up higher, I mean, they're even going to be more skittish, right? And you don't want to ruin and blow up that school, especially if you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no cover for these fish and they're just up on the surface feeding. So if you've got topwater action going on, especially out in these deeper areas where they don't have much cover other than the water depth, then you really got to be careful. You want to stay as far away from these fish as you can, and you want to throw those topwater baits that are going to reach out and touch somebody. And those spooks are just the type of bait that's going to do that. So I did go and I got a bunch of different topwater baits so that you guys can cast a little farther and take advantage of that topwater action that's going on out there. So all the charter captains are still out there and are just active as all get out, especially on social media. You guys know I follow guys like Garrett Samsel, Jason Quintano, Fins and Grins, Max Lasky out there for Lasky Charters. And these guys have really just been catching a ton of fish. You got Garrett up there in the north end. He's doing everything. He's catching muskies, having plenty of multi-fish days out there on skis right now. Still catching a lot of walleyes up there on that north end, and a lot of smallies as well. So the action up there, I mean, when I follow these charter captains, a lot of times these guys have got different areas where they focus. So it really helps me piece together a lot of info on what's going on out there, plus with everything that you guys bring into the store. So that's one of the reasons why I bring these guys up all the time. Plus they post a lot of real cool pics out there, and it really helps to keep these fishing reports fresh. So Max Lasky had a great pick this week of a muskie coming to net with a Wonder Bread spinner hanging out of its mouth, and that was just so cool to see that, because of course we all use Wonder Bread for everything, right? Whether we're ice fishing, crawler harness, blades, bombers, I mean, you name it, there's Wonder Bread patterns or everything. And yes, muskies like Wonder Bread as well. I personally hate Wonder Bread itself, the bread, but I love the color and I love to paint it, and it does catch fish like and everything. So it's pretty cool to see a muskie come into net with a big old Wonder Bread spinner hanging out of its mouth. There's just some great fish being caught out there. There's a lot of muskie action going on. Some of it's on the Canadian side, some of it's up on that north end. Usually this time of the year with all the boat traffic and all the weeds, a lot of that activity is over on the Canadian side. It's just so much easier to fish over there, and so that's why you're going to see a lot of extra focus over there. Plus you got a lot more deep water over on that other side of the lake, and as things heat up, the action over there even gets more pronounced compared to on the American side. Walleye bite is still going out there by the channel, along with the perch bite. Like I was just talking about, guys are going out there, and guys that are fishing for perch are catching walleyes mixed in, and obviously the guys trolling for walleye, especially with crawler harnesses, are catching plenty of perch too. So as I've said before, if you're one of those guys trolling for walleyes, pay attention to where those perch are at. When that walleye bite slows down, just switch over and fish for perch, and you're liable, if you didn't get enough for your limit on the eyes, you're liable to finish it off when you're out there perch fishing too. So, but I mean, the perch bite's been really good, whether you're over in Canadian water or in the American water. There's plenty of perch action out there. Starting to see pictures, actually not starting to see, but actually over the last couple of weeks, seeing quite a few pictures on Facebook and other social media of bluegill spawning beds, and I always forget to mention that. But there's plenty of action, especially near shore up on that north end. And then in and around like areas like Metro Beach, and then down close to like the 11 Mile area, in tight, anywhere where you've got the right bottom composition, you'll find pumpkin seeds and bluegills both spawning in a lot of these areas out there. So if that's your thing, Lake St. Clair, I know it's not really known for that, but for you guys that ice fish it, you know there's just a ton of big gills and big pumpkin seeds to be caught. So maybe on those days when the wind's out of the wrong direction and you can't get out to where you want to go for walleyes or muskies or whatnot, maybe bring that ultralight along and cast for some gills and pumpkin seeds. It's a blast catching those big old dinner plate panfish, and they're also great table fare as well. Smallie action is still going, like I was just talking about with the major league guys. There's been that great topwater bite going on out there. But generally, overall, the bigger fish, on average, are 14 to 16 feet of water. Doesn't mean you're not going to catch bigger fish in tight, like Mike Coleman always likes to prove when he's out there with his kayak, because most of the time he's not going out to 14 or 16 feet of water out there with that kayak, and he still manages to catch some really good fish. But the lion's share of the big fish now have moved out much deeper. There's plenty of weed growth out there. There's plenty of bait fish out there, and you've got the mayfly hatch going as well. So there's a lot of that fishing activity is going on out in that deeper water. I did get a decent satellite image, although I kind of had to bounce around and look at a couple of different days. You'll see the smoke in that satellite image, which is we've all been dealing with out here, right? It smells horrible sometimes. I don't know if I'm completely buying that this is all coming from Canada, but I'm not going to get into all that right now. But anyways, there is definitely some nasty stuff in the air. You can see it in that satellite image. The one image that's kind of almost blocking out the lake. but in this one image that's pretty decent shot, you can see the water clarity out there on the lake. You can clearly see the channel. You can also clearly see that the rains that we've gotten created one heck of a mud line over on that Canadian side. And for the guys that are fishing over there, I'm sure they're going to be able to key in on that mud line as it moves along. With the other rain forecast that we've got, and I'll talk about the weather forecast here in a minute, I'm sure we're going to get more mud lines forming out there, which is a great thing considering how clear the rest of the lake really is out there right now. So weather forecast. If you've been watching the weather this last week, they have been like wrong, like constantly, whether it's wind directions or whether it was one day I was just looking at the weather, I was going into work and it said, like 0% chance of rain, right? And it was sunny. And I get into the store and I'm like, what the heck is that noise? And I look outside and it's pouring rain out in the parking lot. Pull up the radar, look at the radar, and there's thunderstorms just popping up right over top of the store and to our north and to our east, and it was like a 0% chance of rain. So they blew that one. So I have zero faith in this forecast that we're looking at here right now. But I guess one good thing we can look at on it is that after we get through, like right now, it's blowing pretty good out of the southeast. But it looks like if they are right going for the next several days, that we should have relatively light winds. Okay, now they have that crazy thunder, or that lightning bolt. It's not a thunderbolt, but it's a lightning bolt icon that this time of the year, especially when we get these different little fronts coming through and the humidity is high, you're going to get thunderstorm activity. And they've got those darn lightning bolts on there. So if it were me, I'm not going to let that stop me from going fishing. All that tells me is I need to be looking at the radar. Like if I'm planning on going out, take a look at the radar, see what's happening, and keep an eye on it when you're out there on the water. And if you see threatening weather, then move and get off of it. A lot of times on Lake St. Clair, as long as it's not rough, you can literally outrun these little storms as they're popping up and moving around out there. So you can literally just, especially now with the technology we have, you can just pick your phone up and go, yeah, I need to go a little bit north and that one will miss us. So I wouldn't let this weather forecast stop you from making plans to go fishing, but you're going to definitely want to pay attention to what's going on out there. And we know we can't trust the weatherman for anything. So might as well just take it into our own hands, use that radar that we got on our phones, and just, have at it and take advantage of the great fishing that we have out here on Lake St. Clair. Hey, if you like this video content and you want to get updated as soon as the next video is out there, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon and you'll get notified as soon as the next video is up.